Hello and welcome, everyone. As we all know, April is Sexual Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month and Child Abuse Awareness Month. And so we're so excited to have Rituparna Chatterjee talk to us about her book, The Water Phoenix, which was #1 in Google India and #2 in Google India, right? She's showing us the book.
It was briefly so, and I think it was in the top 5 best-selling nonfiction of 2020, according to the New Indian Express, which shows how badly people need solutions, and they just rightly bought it for that.
And it's so important for us to tell stories about child abuse, child sexual abuse in our community. And there aren't many stories. And what we find is that when we have books or art, that folks are more willing to listen and understand the topic. Otherwise, I feel like people run away from talking about important issues such as this, right?
So that's right. Yeah, storytelling is one of the oldest, what shall I say, characteristics of being human. So we relate through stories. It's human connection in itself. So yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for making time to be with us.
Thank you. I'm just so honored you guys do such amazing work and to consider the Water Phoenix with me. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. No, we're excited to talk about it. So tell me, why did you write this story? What was the purpose number one, when did you start writing it? And then why are you sharing the story? And what motivated you to present your story to the world?
Well, like I always say, nobody in their right frame of mind will go all out writing a memoir like this, and it's very intimate, because I always say the main protagonist is the human body of the child, and the characters are not the humans, but the feelings, the trauma, the smell of relief, comfort, the tentacle, which is how she processes what the abuse is. Like there's something wrong in the body. So nobody in the right frame of mind would do it. I was trying to write something else after my last book on an ordinary life, on the life of the actor Nawazuddin Siddiqui, and I was just not making any progress with the novel. And anybody who writes, certain type of books, mostly fiction or like this, which reads like fiction, would know that we write from the subconscious. So you cannot force it. What will come will come. And this book just flew out. I finished it in 5 months. I could have finished it in 3 months, actually, but childcare, whoever is a mom knows. And, behind the scenes, we chatted with Gauri and all of that. So it went pretty fast, and the draft is not too different, but it did sit for a long time with the publisher. Various reasons, coronavirus. It was a very special book for Bloomsbury. I'm so grateful for that, because I'm not, one of those celebrities or whatever, yet it was one of their biggest books. So they really wanted to go all out, make sure that every word almost in the edits, was just right, because there are a lot of triggers, and there's also a lot of joy and adventure and fun. So all of that, I think publishing is probably one of the slowest industries in the world. So the writing it goes pretty fast for me.
So did you have to overcome any anxieties or fears in beginning to share this story?
So this is such a good question, and mostly people would say yes, but because I had done all my healing by 2015, 2016, when I wrote it, I hate to say it, but it was a piece of cake. It was really easy, but I shouldn't hate to say this, because that is testimony to the fact that one could have healed, because though I was, raped at age 5.5. After that, I was also abused consistently by several people. And in spite of that, to have visited it and, to just feel, not to suppress anything, but that is testimony to the fact that you can. The one thing that was super triggering for me was the part where I lost my mother at 4.5, and I had to not just revisit it, but explain it during the edits, because it goes pretty early on in the first 2 chapters. And this is how she discovers, I will say she, because, we're going back then, that, this is death, and this is, she thought it's a raft and not that wooden stretcher that whatever my mother had come on. So the editor said this is not how it looks, or the car a horse, just these little things, that it's not a house made of glass, so you have to be more specific. That's when it struck me, this has to be a magical realism memoir. It has to be how a child saw it. uh,
Right.
and it cannot be your typical self-help book or your typical non-fiction contemporary. It has to have that magic element within how she is processing the trauma itself, not just outside this peacock is a water phoenix, or something else, and there's tons of wild animals, there's a panther attack, all these things are there, but that changed it. And that's why I always say every traumatic event has you can alchemize it, and there's gold in it always if we sit with it and we heal it. So that was the difficult part, but it also, because I realized my core trauma then was the sense of abandonment I felt constantly starting that moment.
Right. So you're talking about a lot of the things that
So,
children do to cope,
yeah, absolutely.
and,
uh,
and the different things that they go through as a
yeah,
result of losing a parent at a young age. The abandonment issues are real, and how that impacts our life, and it's the journey of how traumatic events impact us throughout our lifetime. They don't just go away when we get older. They stay with us, right?
absolutely.
And these are important things for us to keep in mind. So it's so important that you're sharing so much of this, so much of yourself and your journey. But I also like, yeah, how children may go to magic realism, surrealism to
Yeah,
cope.
imagination. So the books, I mean, if you can see it, the book's dedication is for each child that has been abused. So it's not dedicated to my, well, mostly writers will dedicate to their family or somebody they love. It's not that at all. So there was, by the time the book was written, and that's what I've been hearing from everybody. Oh my God, this is my story, and that's why this book did much better than we expected, because it's the silent story of so many. And in 2019, 1 billion kids aged between 2 and 17, so they are children, were sexually abused. I'm not even talking abandonment, emotional abuse. And these are just reported cases. In 1 year, 1 billion kids. And that's a lot more than the coronavirus population in 2020. So that just shows, silently how much so many people shared their stories, and it's cookie cutter, which is so interesting. I also had a lot of people from the LGBTQ community reach out in a conservative country like India, or not even even openly talk on Instagram how what they thought was love was, or it was part of a loving relationship was actually rape. And they were 15, so they thought they knew it, but it took them till they were 21 or so to realize that it wasn't. And even consent is not so simple. And just the anger that is there, the rage in the teenage years, there's a lot of suicide attempts starting at age 6. The fact that nothing is sugar coated and it still has a happy ending, I think that is what yeah, and it's not fiction. I think that is what really resonated with the special demographic, especially the youngsters in India.
So that's a great transition, because one of the things is the ending true to life. This is the ending that you wanted, or is it an ending that the publishers wanted, right?
It is my life, and it says life as art. So one thing the publishers did want was that it be a memoir, because there is no book like this. I hate to say it, in the world. We have a lot of books that talk about, a lot of Toni Morrison's work, for instance. They will talk about abuse, and they'll, there's just so much, but none of there's nothing that it's a true story where the ending, without sugarcoating, without avoiding, and complete abandonment. I did not seek out a therapist, but I practiced everything that the therapist, would tell you, short of medication, inner child work, voice dialogue, changing the story. And there's a lot of Jungian psychology. So it's the same processes, but how I arrived at it, it just helped that I read like crazy throughout. And that was my coping mechanism. The imagination, imaginary friends, just a very magical view of the world, which stayed on all the way till my 20s, even today. And that's what abandonment did, because I wasn't conditioned very much. So if you want to put it that way, it was, I guess, a pro, like I don't know, every negative thing has a positive side. So That's how I choose to see it. So, Life as Art, which is the last chapter, shows you radical self love, that you are present with yourself every minute. You literally treat yourself like a baby. A newborn baby is the most selfish creature in the world. Now you're born, oh my God, what's wrong? Do you need a diaper change? Oh my God, you need a burp? Are you a parent?
I'm not. I'm an auntie, but not a parent.
So, you've seen it.
Yeah.
So, um, so that's how I'll check with myself, how are you? And if I ask people how are you, always add how are you feeling, because it's never a conversational piece. So every minute you ask yourself, how am I feeling? And there is a process here called emotional vipassana, which was later converted into a book called The Completion Process by this lady called Teal Swan, in which you just see. So for me, anxiety is always here. How am I feeling right now? Okay, when did I last feel this way? Okay, yesterday. When did I first feel this way? And then there's also a process by Byron Katie, which is being used by psychiatrists all over America now. It's called The Work, and it's free of cost. And just I've been doing all of these processes. And so radical self-love is every minute you check with yourself. And then there's a lot of writing, and I've done a piece for the Mumbai Mirror on writing as therapy and how we turn into, warriors, because when you have written out your anxiety, and it doesn't have to be something like child sexual abuse. The whole world is in PTSD, and we will be for the longest time with all the coronavirus, isolation. There's just the news is traumatic, generally.
Yes.
So I always say that therapeutic practices are not a luxury. Everybody has something going on. Um, we may not talk about it, we may not be aware of it, but journaling, anything, just getting it out of your body, so it's not storing it as trauma, and boom, one day you have a stroke, or you have Bell's palsy, you have whatever the body has stored as trauma will manifest into some huge illness. And the West is now seeing it, and the connection between stress and real solid
Yeah.
physical illnesses. So
No, and we've definitely seen that in our work of like the
yeah,
pain and the trauma and how pain will go away when we've gotten out of violent and stressful relationships.
yeah.
I've definitely seen that with many of the survivors we've worked with. But what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, that writing was your form of therapy, and reading, right, were your forms of therapy. Did you learn your path to healing from books and writing?
It didn't happen overnight. And if one thing that was very different for me from the first chapter is I grew up in, my dad was in the railway, so he got posted all over India, and I didn't have a mom. I kind of just tagged along. In fact, my education was at stake unless I went to boarding school. So before the age of 9, I had been to, I always say 9.5 schools, because I didn't even complete, third grade. It was just, I think, we just there for like the finals or whatever, just a few months. So I spent so much time alone and in nature and with books. What that did is it gave me a very, what we talk about today, mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
be present with your breath, all these things that we have termed for today. That was just my way of being. So and I read a lot. That was, and we're talking about pre-liberalization India, pre-internet, no screens. I didn't have any activities. I had all the time in the world. And I started writing at age 6. Alice in Wonderland is such a big part of this book, because I always thought it was a horror story. She's going through one horror after another, while the grown-ups can do whatever they want, just like, my life. And I would say any child's life, you have no control. I always say childhood is imprisonment. You have no control whatsoever. This is why teenagers are dying to get a license and will take up anything so they can get out of the house. And then, it's totally understandable. So I had all that time, and that made me already a very super present person. So for me, being present was not difficult. And then every time I read, I kind of, I would just say the energy shifted. It was just, I guess, happiness or whatever, but it wasn't distraction, which is what we see today. That if I have anything, a lot of people will take a drug or smoke or emotionally eat, have a drink, whatever it is, go on social media. That is no less than cocaine. I always say that, we're just constantly on social media, wasting away, I don't know how many hours a day. News, watch a movie, anything, unless just to avoid that. It's different when you have sat with it,
Right.
questioned your thoughts, watched them, and then gone there. See, even if you want to call it meditation, because that's what all the meditative practices of the world teach us, to observe our thoughts. Or if you go to a shrink who will tell you, just yesterday, a friend was home, and he was telling us the same thing. He's French. And he was in France and was saying how anxious his friends are, how worthless they feel if they're not in relationships. He's in 20s, and how that is causing them stress and trauma, and how they're doing exactly the same thing. So I started writing letters to the Cheshire Cat, all the characters in Alice in Wonderland, to the caterpillar. These small characters were my favorite. I did not know what I was doing then. To me, it was just fun. There was no structure. I had all the time in the world. I failed at everything, but I was really ahead in reading and writing, way ahead of my age. And then when I was 11, I started writing very formally. I started writing poetry. And because I was in boarding school, and I had like an audience of 300 girls who just like listen, mesmerized. I think it's just that we didn't have any TV. It just gave us a lot of human
Okay.
connection, and I felt like a celebrity, really, like a star or whatever. So I had that, and that's so important because any art, especially writing, because it's so long, it's so lonely, it's so solitary. So we need that a bit of whatever you want to call it, validation. We all need even if you don't like it, there's some connection. You're not just always say writer's life is quarantine all life long. So that helped, and then that's how I found my way. And when I came to California, meeting with writers here, I saw how aware they were. Everybody is on medication. I was personally, that was not my go-to route ever, because and that's what this book says. So this is someone who has, even if you're homeless, there are tools here. You really don't need anything. So that, I think that's another reason why this book became as popular as it did. It's simply because it's not, you really can rely 100% on yourself, provided you are completely committed. There are every tool is within yourself in here. I mean, of course, if you can afford a therapist, please go for it. If that's
Right.
whatever works, but this is really uh, assuming you're marooned on an island or something, you can still do it. Um, just questioning your thoughts. So I got into journaling. I have just outgrown it, actually. I used to wake up in the morning, or anytime I would write 2 3 pages. I was done. But very recently I've outgrown it because I've been doing it for so long, and then I always check with myself, how are you, how are you feeling, and go through those processes. Byron Katie's the work, which is again 4 questions. What does this mean? Is this really true? If this is true, what does this mean? Who would I be without this thought? So these things become such a part of your life that now no thought makes sense. I'm just uh, a magnet attracting whatever, a thought based on whatever I'm feeling, and then just adding to the anxiety or not. So I take insanely good care of myself. My whole life is about self care. My mental health is a full time job, 24/7. Um, I feel everybody needs it.
And I think that's a great thing to talk about because, given our culture, as women, we're taught to take care of everybody else but ourselves.
That's the
So,
worst. Yeah, yeah.
and so that's revolutionary in the sense of that, like, how do we focus and how do we check in with what we're feeling instead of checking in on everybody else?
Right, and how will we serve? It's, if your own cup is empty, how are you going to pour out that, I don't know, milk latte, whatever it is,
Exactly.
for others? And the caregiving never ends, really. I think just in general, all over the world, girls are just, no matter how liberal the society, they tend to be a little more responsible. And then
Mhm.
then you're taking care of your kids, then you're taking care of your ailing parents, which is all great. But hello, what about
But
you?
you got to take care of yourself before you take care of
Yeah.
everybody
And I
else.
do these processes with my son, like kind of just nip it at the bud, because I feel it's human birth is trauma. It's like impossible to avoid it. And I have him do the same things and the same processes and really sit with it. And he's highly sensitive, which I always is a superpower, because he plays the piano so beautifully. He has never been tutored. He just will just listen to Chopin or Beethoven, and he just play. That's because he's so tuned in, and that's what we will realize, that
Yeah.
We don't need to shut down our sensitivity. That is our natural state. It's a modern world that is messed up. And so, so when I'm very anxious, I'll tell him, I'm sorry, but I cannot be there for you right now. I'm fragile too. And so he gets and I want him to know this, that he can rely on himself, which is so important, especially in Indian culture. We're so attached to our parents that when they, I mean, of course, it's going to be traumatic when they pass away, but they will one day. And of course we miss their love, but to know that you can have that emotional support within yourself can make for a very beautiful unconditional love, devoid of attachment, devoid of that, oh god, I wish my mom was here, but you just love unconditionally because you're not needing them, and that's freedom.
That's beautiful. So tell me, what do you want people to walk away after reading this book? And what was the impact that you were looking for with this book? And I know a lot of what you said was for folks to have tools, right? Um, and to have a way to be mindful and look out for themselves. But I think one of the things I heard is that you've reached out to so many people have come to you, survivors from many backgrounds. What's the takeaway you want people to have from your experience of writing the book and the feedback you've been getting, but also from the book?
Well, the first thing is the quote. I don't know if you can see it. It's by Jung. I am not what happened to me. I am who I choose to become. That just sets the tone for the whole book. But you're not avoiding what happened. You're not shutting down. The most heartbreaking part to me has been the stories of the men who have reached out. And I think there's something here. The LGBTQ community has been a little more open, but I'm just saying this on my own little research based on people who've reached out. But the men who identify as being hyper masculine have really shut it down, and then it comes out in other ways. And we see this with a lot of war veterans. Abuse is abuse. It doesn't matter if it's sexual. I think emotional abuse is the worst. Gaslighting, don't get validated, all of that. And then they will just shoot somebody or be then there's domestic violence. All of
Mhm.
that, the root cause is shutting down. So the book says embrace your sensitivity, celebrate it. It's who we are supposed to be. We were born as newborns who could not fend for ourselves. Our skin had to be protected against the sun. Love yourself like that, because honestly nobody else can. uh, and do not seek external validation, even in simple things. I'm not saying for did I do a good job or not, but just regularly be really badass. I mean, like, there is no other option. If you Gentleness takes a lot more courage than hitting somebody or shooting somebody or whatever it is. Being gentle, choosing that path is probably the hardest thing in the world, but it is so worth it. I don't think anything else is worth it. You can hold on to your innocence and softness, and and the best part is the world around starts reflecting that. I'm living proof. I'm the kind of people have worked with on this book, the kind of stories that has come. I mean, that is just nothing short of a fairy tale. And the kind of abandonment I felt even in my 20s or before, I could never have imagined that. It's just because I healed, my world changed. The change we want to see will only come when we change, when they say be the change. So my biggest tip is, do not shut down your sensitivity. Be hyper present, whatever it takes. Do not add meaning to it. Things one calls meaning the self-destruct button. I call it, it's not even a ticking time bomb. It's already, you've attached meaning, boom, it's gone. And even, and then all in Tibetan philosophy, in Taoist philosophy, they all say nothing has meaning. Only human being will attach. This is beautiful. This feeling is not right. Animals don't have that. It's very unnatural. It goes against nature. That's why we have mental health problems, which any animals in the wild, very few of them would have, unless they have PTSD from, a zebra having just escaped from the clutches of a tiger may have that. But then they shake off. This is very interesting in the animal world. They shake off everything, and the trauma has left their body, and they can go and just be. That's what we need to do as humans. We need to be present, and whether it's writing, whether it's breathing, whether it's buying carries the work, whether it's skills one of the completion process, or whether it's meditation, there are endless processes out there. After that, change the story. Choose who you want to become every minute. Define yourself. It's not as simple as I don't care if people say that it doesn't matter if others like you. Do you like you? Who cares about like? We're talking about radical self-love. Like you have to be borderline narcissistic in radically approving of yourself. So if today I yelled at my kid, I will actually approve of myself because yeah, I'm human too. And at some point, I cannot, no matter how sensitive he is and no matter how much I want to be there for him, I'm not going to guilt trip myself for that. That has taken an insane amount of courage. Obviously, I'm not, it's within boundaries. But mom feels so guilty. So changing the story after you've sat with everything.
And so what I'm hearing you say is, number one, we have to have radical self-love.
Absolutely.
There are many paths to healing.
Yes, yes, yes.
That is
But
really important, is that we all may have a different path to healing and we need different resources. And of course, you know, I think the other piece is that, that we have to listen to ourselves, listen to our bodies, and that communication is important. As you talk about, like, being able to honestly communicate with your son, you're not just ignoring him, but you're communicating what your needs are, and I need to take care of myself, right?
yes,
And
that's very empowering because a child knows they have that power and that even grown-ups are fragile. So when they grow up, they do not manifest really triggering relationships, which will go on until you've healed. You will be in one terrible relationship, in bad friendship, you will have that abandonment. And when you're present, you won't. It changes, it radically changes. I mean, there's still difficult.
yeah, communication and vulnerability is so important.
Yeah,
I,
vulnerability is everything. Yeah, you can.
right. And when we allow that, then we're not having to create that false wall that's in front of us, right?
We don't need any walls.
So that's really powerful. I know that we had somebody that saying hello to you, and asked about your thoughts on creativity and censorship. Um, could you please tell me your views on censorship destroying creativity?
That is the answer. Censorship does destroy creativity. Uh, so here is the thing with the internet, we have never been more free, and that's probably why every time there is government censorship. I mean, I my background is in journalism in India, which now ranks so low in press freedom, which ranks below Taliban ruled Afghanistan in safety for women, which if you cannot be yourself, how are you going to be creative? Because creativity is radical self-expression, which is radical self-love. Hey, this is my point of view. I always say this: if a toddler will scribble, the whole world will go, "Oh my God, this is the most beautiful piece of work we have ever seen!" Oh, they'll all clap for whatever the scribble is as an art form. And as grown-ups, we have to prove it, and this is changing. The important thing is you do not censor yourself, and this is endless, um, endless faith. Whether you're religious or not is different, but that you will be okay. You have always been okay. You can breathe. You don't have to worry about where the next breath will come from. I mean, that is the most radical, most basic survival. Then that makes you be okay. So only if you have that kind of courage. And this book says, all writing is an act of courage, but especially stuff like this. I thought this would be the hardest book I'd write. The novel I'm writing, it's fiction. It deals with trauma in women's bodies and mothers' bodies. It is a whole different level. So it's like a video game. Every time you think it'll get easier, it doesn't. So you just do not censor yourself. What happens in the world will be different, whether they accept it or not. But you can self-publish. You can go on YouTube. You will talks. There are so many ways today, more than ever before. Instagram is great for poetry. People are dying for human connection. I think people have realized more and more that that is our most basic need. This is why when we have a breakup, we stop eating and drink whatever. We starve ourselves because we are starving for love. And creativity is that. Just don't censor yourself. You will be able to connect with a whole bunch of people. That's what it's here for, to foster human connection while you express your true authentic self.
Mm, beautiful, beautiful words.
Thank you.
As we're looking at the time, we're getting close to the end of time. I'm trying to just see if there's any more questions that folks have. And I think a lot of it is, I mean, the key takeaways that I'm walking away from is that we are not the experiences that we've been through, right? The importance of radical self-love, of communicating, finding our unique path to healing, which and to express ourselves and to be our authentic selves. Those are important key messages that I'm hearing from our conversation.
Yes, I'd just like to add to that about the experiences that you mentioned. The whole game is one of identity. Who are we? Is our identity even our own? It never is. It was shaped by our parents, it was shaped by society, and for women, it's endless, and the body. So once you shift your identity, and again in life as art it says that I learned this from my kid who was then a toddler that um, if I can be Batman 1 minute, I can be Joker 1 minute, I can be something else, why can't I be that as a grown up? I mean, make it Halloween every minute, see what the moment requires you to be let go of that identity. That is freedom. Identity is the trap. So and that's what you mentioned, the experience. Oh, I'm an abuse survivor. You don't have to survive. Once you love yourself so much, you can just be and accept and just let it go.
So, among all the positive feedback that you've gotten from the book, what is one response or two that you felt the most touched by?
Oh my God, I have cried so much. I have cried in interviews. I have cried in. They are all around the same, and they interestingly a lot of them come from kids. But the most shut down, one of at least one man, very hyper masculine man, very open. Not very open, just opened up and said, you're very brave, you spoke about it, I was abused too. And in India, teachers, everybody, I mean, you don't need terrorists with the kind of teachers at least we grew up with in the 90s and 80s. I think it's changing now. Everybody, so there was so much. And when they shared their stories, and so many of them said that by the time I was done, I was a different person because this book let me sit with my trauma that I didn't even know. A lot of them said we grew up in what we thought was stable families, but we didn't realize they were emotionally abusive until we read this. It wasn't just outright domestic violence or dad being an alcoholic and crashing. It was something else. So, and in the end, they felt they had done that, gone through the same journey, and they had just completely transformed. I mean, what could be a greater gift than that? That you have just changed. I don't know how many lives just by sharing your story, and that is the power of human stories. That hey, I'm not alone in this. Everybody else feels the same way too. And I'm saying everybody else because I've lost count of the stories. And I think I was more touched by the men, especially the hyper masculine shutdown. And there were editors who said, I'm sorry, I can't read this book. This happened to me. Like, these are your first conversations with people, these are emails. Um, it's amazing how many friends I have made just through random, very formal email conversations. This is why we need to share our stories, and you guys are doing such a great job, such a great platform for that. Thank you for the work you do.
Yeah, no, thank you. And of course, I mean, if you can at some point, we'd love. Do you have like an Instagram handle or something where folks can follow?
I'm not on Instagram, but you can tag Bloomsbury India. They are on Instagram. My
Okay,
public, and they can share it. Yeah, if
Bloomsbury
I
Indy? Okay.
on Instagram, I'll just never get any work done. It's so
No,
interesting.
that's true. That's true. Like part of your healing was not being connected to so much of the media and being able to turn off,
Yeah,
right?
I still am not. Just a few minutes a day at most. That's, I guess, just the journey
That's
through.
important. We forget that. We feel like we always have to be connected and then we can't listen to ourselves. And I think I
And
just,
that's part of identity again. Who told us that we need to be informed?
yes.
That, yes, people are ignorant. I'm just super selfishly committed to my happiness every minute.
That is so beautiful. It's a great way to end this. And as you know, telling stories and highlighting authors is one way for us to create different paths to healing, for folks to hear and feel less alone and isolated. So thank you. I know you've been really busy, so thank you for making time to join us.
Thank you so
And
much for having me.
yeah, let's hope that we can have some more conversations. But thank you again, and we look forward to hearing more and hearing about your next book coming up, right?
Yeah, yeah. Working on it. Yeah. Thank
Yes.
you.
So we'll let you get back to that, but thank you for helping us create a dialogue around child abuse and how it impacts our community and breaking down the myths and stereotypes that we as a community have about talking about these issues.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing.